Hey guys, welcome back to my channel for day number 3 of Mystery Week. If you don't know, we are currently having Mystery Week on my channel where I post a brand new unsolved mystery video every single day for 5 days straight. If you are enjoying what I'm doing, then please subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Today's mystery is all the way from Japan. I do have to give a content warning on this one. It is pretty gruesome. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if you don't want to hear anything gruesome, anything too violent, then go ahead and check out my other videos. I'll have them linked up here and I'll also have them linked down there as well. I also want to give my usual disclaimer that by making this video, I mean absolutely no disrespect to any of the victims or the families that were affected by this case. This video is purely for educational purposes and to give you guys more information about this case. Today we'll be talking about the Inokashira Park dismemberment incident. Another disclaimer before we continue, a lot of this information was in Japanese. A lot of these words are Japanese words. I don't speak Japanese, I don't read Japanese, so I did my best to get as accurate information as possible, but if I do make any mistakes or if my pronunciation is wrong, feel free to have a go at me in the comment section down below. The Inokashira Park is a public park in Mitaka City in Tokyo, Japan, and it was opened in May of 1921. It was actually Japan's first ever suburban park. The park is divided into 4 areas. It has a total of 380,000 square meters, and it also has a zoo, it's got a pond, it's got an aquarium. It's also really famous for the cherry blossoms that bloom there every spring. But in 1994, the Inokashira Park gained fame for an entirely different reason. On the 23rd of April 1994, a park worker who was a groundskeeper was going about her normal duties, emptying out dustbins. It was a Saturday, and the previous day, being Friday, was the day that the refuse removal company came to empty out the dustbins, so they would come and collect all of the dustbins. But on the Saturday she just had to empty out the dustbins and then put them where the refuse company will come again the next week Friday to collect the dustbin material. She was emptying the dustbins and then she came across a bin, and in the bin there was a plastic bag that had been double tied the way they do it in the fishing industry, and she could smell something kind of funky coming from the bag. And she thought that it was raw fish that someone had dumped, so she intended to actually take this bag, empty it out and feed the cat with what she assumed to be the raw fish that was inside this bag. So she took the refuse bag to her co-workers so they could have a closer inspection of what was there, see which parts of the fish were usable and things like that. And when her co-workers opened the bag, the first thing they saw was a human ankle. There was a total of 24 human pieces inside this refuse bag. Some of those pieces were 2 hands, there was also 2 feet, there was a right shoulder, and there was also obviously the ankle. After this very disturbing and very gruesome find, the park workers contacted police, and the police came, opened a murder investigation, and they also searched the park for more evidence. So while searching the park, 27 more pieces of this body were found in a dustbin by the pond, and these pieces were also in similar refuse bags as to the first 24 pieces that were found. All of the pieces that were found made up about 2/3 of the human body, but they never found the head, they never found the genitals, the torso, and part of the chest as well. Those have never been recovered to this day. Bara Satsujin, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, it directly translates to scattered murder, is a fairly common crime in Japan. Although Japan boasts one of the lowest murder rates in the world, when a murder does occur, it's more often than not done through scattered murder. And that's when someone is murdered and then their body is cut up and dismembered, and those different body parts are dispersed in different areas. After the discovery of the body, an autopsy was performed on the remaining body parts that they could find. Unfortunately, a cause of death could not be determined. What they could determine, however, was the identity of the victim. And it's Quite impressive that they were able to determine this, because the fingerprints and the palm prints of the hand had been almost completely removed. So they only had very, very partial fingerprints and partial palm prints. But with that, 3 days after the discovery of the body, they were able to identify the victim as 35-year-old Seiichi Kawamura. Kawamura was a 35-year-old married architect that lived less than 1.5 kilometers from the park. On the 21st of April, 2 days before his body parts were discovered, Kawamura had dinner with his family, and then he went out for drinks and karaoke with former co-workers to celebrate a recent promotion he had gotten at work. Kawamura and his friends parted ways at around 11 p.m, but that night he never made it home. The following day, on the 22nd of April, his wife reported him missing. On the 23rd of April, his body was discovered by park workers, and it was identified as Kawamura on the 26th of April. At the time of the murder, the Kawamuras had one child, and they were also expecting their second child, who ended up being born later that year. The case gets even more mysterious and stranger still, as it was discovered that every single piece that was found, so the 24 pieces that were originally found as well as the other 27 pieces, every piece had been carefully washed, completely drained of blood, and they had all been cut to be exactly 20 centimeters long using an electric saw. The muscles had also been expertly cut away to adjust the thickness so that all of the pieces were the exact same dimensions. So all of these pieces, they were all equally as long as one another and also equally as thick. There was no bruising on any of the pieces, and there were also no traces of drugs found. There was, however, slight traces of internal bleeding in the remaining muscles, and this suggests that Kawamura was dismembered whilst he was still alive. Based on the cutting patterns, it's believed that at least 3 people were involved in the dismemberment. After being identified, Kawamura's room was extensively searched. All of his friends, acquaintances, business partners, colleagues, they were also questioned. Over 37,000 people have been questioned about this case. But no significant information has been obtained, and the murder still remains unsolved. On the 26th of April, the day that Kawamura was identified, 264 people were killed at the Nagoya airport in Japan. This was due to the China Airlines Flight 140 crash, and as a result of this, all the media coverage shifted from this dismemberment case to the airport crash.
The Airbus was only seconds from touchdown when, according to Japanese officials, the pilot radioed that he would abort the landing and make another try. Witnesses say at that point, the nose suddenly veered up and the right wing smashed into the runway. The weather was clear, there was no wind. One witness said it appeared the nose landing gear was not down.
The case was also not widely reported because of a lack of any new information following the discovery of the body. At the end of June of that year, diving teams were called in to investigate the pond, as it was possible that perhaps the perpetrator had disposed of some parts of the body in the pond as well, like maybe the head and the genitals and all the other missing parts. But unfortunately, this search also came up with nothing. 11 months after the discovery of the body parts, on the 20th of March 1995, the sarin gas attacks on the Tokyo subway occurred. Because of this, a lot of detectives and investigators were moved from whatever cases they were working on to investigate the sarin gas attacks, and this meant that the murder investigation was even more negatively affected. The sarin gas attack incident is also a really interesting case that happened in Japan. If you want me to do a video covering that case, then you can let me know by leaving a like on this video. That is actually all the information available on this case, so in this next part of the video I'm going to be going into the theories. The first theory is that Kawamura's own wife was responsible for the murder. This theory exists because it's believed that she reported him missing too soon after he went missing, but I don't know if I can really believe that. First of all, there isn't a time limit on how much you should wait before you report someone missing. And also, if you are a pregnant woman expecting your husband to come home that night to his pregnant wife and he doesn't come home, that is cause for concern, especially because there wasn't any problems in their marriage. They didn't have any financial problems or anything like that, so it would be strange for him to not come home to his pregnant wife. Another theory is that Kawamura was hit by a car and the perpetrators then decided to dismember him and dispose of his body. This theory came about because witnesses claimed to have heard a car crashing into something in the early hours of the 22nd of April. It's thought that the perpetrators, not wanting to get in trouble, dismembered the body and disposed of it in the park. But to me, this theory doesn't really hold any water, because why would they go through all the trouble of taking the body to whatever location, draining it completely of blood, removing all of the fingerprints, dismembering the body? Dismembering a body is so difficult. I basically had to do it for 2 years with 6 other people, and it's not something that can be done overnight with minimal skill and expertise. For this theory to say that they crashed into him on the 22nd and by the 23rd he was fully cut up, dismembered into 20 centimeter pieces, and parts of it were shaved off, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Dismembering a body takes hours. To me, that's a lot of work for a hit and run. The third theory is that 2 unidentified men were responsible. Unconfirmed reports claim that Kawamura was approached by 2 men around midnight on the 23rd of April, and then later these 2 men were seen entering the park at around 4 a.m. There's apparently video footage of these men entering the park with a black refuse bag. I couldn't find any of this footage, so I don't know if it even exists or not, but apparently those are the unconfirmed reports. The fourth and final theory is that either Kawamura or his wife were members of a religious cult. This theory claims that Kawamura or his wife attempted to leave the cult, but Kawamura was then murdered by cult members. Because of the known evidence and the circumstances of the murder, I'm more inclined to believe that this had some cult influence. Not necessarily that the Kawamuras were involved in cult activity, but simply that they were victims of cult activity. This would explain the missing head and genitals. Some cult rituals, specifically satanic rituals, involve using the victim's head and their genitals for nefarious purposes, and I suppose it could also explain why the body was cut to be specifically 20 centimeters and why all the pieces had to be the exact same width. It would make sense if it was for some ritual of some sort. Prior to 2010, Japan had a statute of limitations on murder for 15 years. A statute of limitations is a time period set on a crime that states that after that time period has passed, no one can be prosecuted for that crime. Unfortunately, the statute of limitations for this murder passed in 2009 before the abolishment of this order. So that means that even if the killer was identified today, we wouldn't be able to try them, they wouldn't be prosecuted, they wouldn't be convicted, and they wouldn't have to spend any time in jail for this horrific crime. With all of that said, it does bring us to the end of this video. I'm not gonna ask if you enjoyed this video, but I do hope you found it interesting. If you do want to see more videos like this on my channel, then please go ahead and subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up, leave your comments down below, and follow me on social media so you can get updates on how frequently I'll be posting this week, if there's any updates on the videos, on the upload schedule, anything like that. That'll all be on my social media, which will be linked in the description box down below. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow for day number 4 of Mystery Week. Bye guys.